I say this first. You don't have to be a pro rugby player. Rugby is like such a good way to just learn about life.
That's one thing that I'd say to any young kid coming through. Be willing to make sacrifices.
Keep evaluating what you're doing. Ask for help. Don't be embarrassed by anything. Don't do anything based on bravado or ego.
I definitely don't shy away from those failures and from the tough times, because I think that's what sets you up.
The Burgess Podcast has a purpose to motivate and inspire young rugby players through talking to role models in the game. In these podcasts, we get the opportunity to talk about the careers of a variety of different people in rugby, from academy players to European champions, and through this provide advice and motivation to all young rugby players. So guys, welcome back to the sixth episode of the Burgess Podcast. Today we are joined by current London Irish forward Ollie Hoskins. Ollie, how you doing, mate?
Good, mate. How you going?
Brilliant. So how your rugby started off? You started off in Perth, Australia. How did you get into rugby?
So I've got all my family's English. My dad's from the Isle of Wight, but he's rugby mad. So even though me and my brothers were born in Perth, we'd kind of had no other option. But rugby was the only way forward. So I never really played any other sports apart from rugby. I think I was started when I was 4. I'm the youngest of 3, so watching my brothers play from when I was tiny. I started playing when I was 4. I was watching my dad play when I was a kid, so it was just like a natural thing for me. Rugby's just, it's just our family thing. If you don't play rugby, then you're not really Hoskins.
So it's either that or not the best decision. So first question: were you always a prop? Were you always a prop? That's what I was. I feel like no one picks to be a prop. I
was very reluctant to become one, but I'm glad I did because it's worked out so far. But no, I played number 8 until 16, 17 or so. They started to transition me into prop, and I was very reluctant. I wanted to, because I was always just like the bigger kid at age grade, so I could just run over the top of everyone and score all these tries. So I was like, why the hell do I want to be a prop? I want to be at the back of the scrum so I can pick the ball and run over the line, and that was one of my things. So, but once I got into this sort of the semi-professional academy setup and stuff, they were like, nah, you're transitioning into tight head. I reluctantly did it, and I'm very, very glad I did.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely worked out. So you went to Scotch College over in Australia. What was your time like there? How did your time there impact your development? Obviously, it's a well-known school over here for sport, rowing, rugby. How did your time there develop you as a player?
So in Perth, where I'm from, it's an AFL and cricket, like mad. So Aussie rules football the way again, and they kick the ball through the sticks and stuff, and cricket, like the 2 major sports. Rugby kind of is just like it's got a good following, but it's not nowhere near as prevalent as the other stuff. So like they give out scholarships for AFL and all these other sports, and rugby, you just kind of, the guys who don't play those sports kind of go and play rugby.
Go rugby.
Club rugby is really where the development comes from in WA. So at school, I love playing. I love playing because it was just with all my mates. So we kind of just played rugby at school and stuff. And it was like, I don't want to say, it was quite, the level wasn't the greatest. So I kind of,
of course,
dominated. I was playing first 15 when I was in year 11. And I think I scored like 26 tries in 12 games or something. So it was just like, I played that on a Saturday, and then I'd go, that game kicked off at like 10 a.m. or something, the first 15 did. I'd play that, and I'd go straight from that game and go play club rugby at the under 8. So I got dispensation. I was 16, and then I went and played under 18s with like men's rugby sort of. From there, and that's kind of where the development came from. School's good. I love my time there and stuff, but the level wasn't amazing, and it's kind of the rugby side of the sport is at school was kind of just a fun stuff.
A bit of fun, definitely. Yeah. And I think it's one of those things when you can just kind of run through people and stuff like that. It's all good and fun, but at the same time, it's not always the best for your development. No,
that's why I kind of always wanted to play up, because like I genetically was a bit more advanced than most people. I'd always played up a year when I was younger, because I remember when I started high school, so I was with 13, and they're like the Institute of Sport they go do rounds of all the high school and try and identify like athletes, whatever. So you do like the standard tests and your weight and your height and stuff. I was 13 and I was already like 109 kilos or something.
Bloody
and
hell.
and like there's some footage, some photos and stuff of me. Like I didn't realize at the time because I was playing with my mates and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
that's cool. But I look at the photos now and honestly, I'm like playing against like kids with like 50 kilos, and I was just like, this is just not fair.
It doesn't match up. It's not fair at all. It's not fair at all.
And then once I went and like started playing prop in like men's rugby and stuff, it was like a massive shock to me. I was like, oh, this is how it's like meant to be.
Yeah.
I'm not meant to score every time I touch the ball and stuff.
It's a bit. You're almost playing two different games. You're playing rugby when you're like double the size of everyone. And so I was going to ask. So your first involvement was with the Western Force in the 2012-2013. You're in the training squad. How was that? How was that for you to be obviously one of the youngest amongst all these senior players? How was that for you? Obviously, like you've said, from coming from that to the men's rugby game.
Yeah. I've been in the academy set up at the Force from when I was 14. So I'd go to school all day, and then every day after school from like 4:30 until like 7 or 8, I'd be training with the academy and stuff.
Yeah.
So I was kind of familiar with the professional process and the intensity and stuff. It's obviously different going from being a full-time academy into like you're in the training squad, like training with the big boys.
Yeah.
And for me, it was like the best thing ever because I was just like, I was like manic about rugby. Like it was like all I wanted to do. Honestly, I was obsessed with training. I had like a no lie, like a borderline eating disorder. I like wouldn't have a cheat meal for like ever. I didn't have one for years. I was just like, my parents like thought I was something wrong with me because I honestly was just like, all I wanted to do was train and eat the right stuff and lift weights, and I was so obsessed with it. So when I got to eventually do it full time, I was literally, the first full like training contract I signed, I think I got paid like 1,500 Aussie dollars for the whole year. So I was getting like just over $200 a month, which is like 100 quid a month. But for me, I was just like, oh my God, I get to train, I'm getting paid. This is so cool. My family was kind of part of the supporters sort of bid to get, when the Western Force got brought over to Perth, it was between WA and Melbourne. Yeah. We got the team when it expanded. And my family like organised this massive supporters rally to like push our bid to get the team, and it ended up being like 30,000 people rocked up to it, and it was like it was massive. So I was already like I was like the biggest Western Force fan ever, and then I was like suddenly training with all these guys. I was literally like I would have been such annoying little kid who was like, oh my God, I've watched you for years now. I'm training. I was just like this like little nose, but
fanboy moment.
Yeah, it was literally, I was like such a fanboy, and I was training with them stuff, and it was just like so cool. But it was like it was like a massive shock going from playing. I played like first grade club rugby against men and stuff, but still like the level in Perth isn't amazing. Like I was still pretty dominant in that as a young kid, and then I went from like that. The jump from like club rugby in Perth to super rugby is just like
a whole nother level.
Like it's literally two different sports. So I literally went from being like, I'll be sweet here. And then I went and tried to like scrum against these professional guys, and I got absolutely towed up. But it was really good for my development. Just massive shock to the system, and that was kind of the point where I was like, oh, I've got a lot of development to do. Like there's more to rugby than just running over people and stuff. Definitely. Like scrums were just like a second thought to me, and I was like, oh wow, I've actually got a lot of work to do. So it was a shock, but it was like the best thing in the world. A
good wake-up call, much needed. And also, it was also in 2012, 2013, you represented Australia under-20s in South Africa and France. Yeah. What was the experience like playing against other countries? It must have been surreal.
So cool. Yeah, really, really, really cool. Especially because, like I said before, coming from WA, we're not like a big rugby state at all. So like, and when the Australian teams and stuff are getting picked for like schoolboys and 20s levels and all that sort of stuff, it's always all the Queenslanders, all the New South Wales boys, guys from Brisbane, Sydney and stuff. Just like that's kind of it. And then there's like one or two maybe from like Melbourne or Perth or whatever. So I was like the lone WA guy. So there's two of us my first time over there. And once again, it was like, so we had quite a few like Super Rugby boys playing with us in that thing. And that was like, I hadn't played Super Rugby then. So I was like, I was 19, so I was like, oh my god, I'm playing with Super Rugby players. This is amazing. But then the whole aspect of that tournament is just like it's so much fun. Like being in like being in like a tournament setting is like so foreign, because normally you play a season, you have a
it's not really something that's seen.
Yeah, being like a tournament setting, I remember I just loved it. You play like every 4 days, but it just be like, it's just so competitive and so fun. And when you're like 20 and you haven't like properly played pro rugby, it was just like such a like almost life-changing experience where you're like in Cape Town too, which is just like the coolest city going around.
Definitely.
And you're playing with like these super guys you've seen play Super Rugby, and you're playing against all these guys. Now I know who they are. Back then I didn't know who Gail Figu was or any of the England boys. We played England the last game. I don't know any. Half of them play for England now. At the time, I was like, oh, these English guys, I don't know anything. I'm like, but yeah, it's such a cool experience. That South African one, our team did really bad. We had such a good team on paper. I think we came 8th or something. We're like the worst Australian team. Yeah, I don't think many of the professional boys really cared that much with it.
But I was speaking to, like you said, it was a trigger. Like when I spoke to Scott Steele, he said there were certain triggers in his career that kind of was just a massive source of motivation. I can imagine for you, that's one of them. It's like, this is sick, this is what I want to do. And it all motivates you, just want to bloody train harder, go to work every day, just love it.
100%. Actually, our first game in that tournament was against Scotland. It was against Steely.
Really?
Yeah. I remember that. It was pretty funny. And then,
what was Scott like at under 20s? Was he anywhere near as good? Because I remember him saying he wasn't a standout at age. Yeah. Trade. He said
it was another one where I just like, you kind of, Australia's so far away. You don't really know anyone else outside of Australia. Like I didn't know who Steely was.
Yeah.
I can't remember. Obviously, I know him now. We're good mates. Yeah. But like back then, honestly couldn't have it could have been Steve from down the road playing. I've no idea.
Not a clue.
But
you're there to play your rugby.
Pretty much, because there's this weird there's weird not superiority complex, but when you play in the Southern Hemisphere, there's this like, the narrative in the media where like the Southern Hemisphere play this amazing brand of rugby.
Yeah.
And up in the Northern Hemisphere, all they do is scrum and maul.
Ruck, maul, horrible stuff.
And that's what you kind of thought when we were playing 20s. We were like, oh, these guys are crap. Like we can just we're better players. We play a better brand, and we actually got filled in. So.
I mean, well, it is one of the things. So obviously, when I was playing rugby, you always kind of look at coaches from New Zealand, Australia, all that kind of stuff, and that's how coaches, I feel like, are trying to coach over here. It's not really the game that's played here, because we can't go and play on a Sunday morning. We can't go and play that expensive rugby because it's cold, wet, raining. What's the point in coaching it?
I played the champ.
I know. We're going to get onto the champ, because obviously that was a bit of a change for you.
Definitely.
So obviously in 2014 was when you made your debut against the Waratahs. Yeah. Describe that feeling. Obviously, explain. You saying that you were a fan of Western Force, and then making your debut. Crazy.
Yeah, that was nuts. Like, sort of, I went into that season. So I went from being like a full-time academy essentially, where you train full-time with the pro squad, but you're still in the academy. And then the year after, 2 years after that, so I started that the year after that, I signed a training contract. So essentially, you're still not fully in the full senior squad, but you're not in the academy. You're like kind of bridging
in between.
And I think it was still for absolute peanuts. I was getting paid the equivalent of like £8,000 a year. So it was like, but I was living at home, and I was like, this is cool.
Yeah.
I'm like, so I literally went into that season being like, I just want to train hard and maybe get a cap, like maybe get one. If I don't, like I literally wasn't expecting anything. And then just somehow I trained really well. I remember there was this one training session in pre-season, and that sticks with me. I still remember the exact. We were doing just like phase play or whatever, and for some reason during this phase play, I literally just said to myself, like, I'm going to get through as much work as I can in this next 30 seconds. I remember literally sprinting. I remember I like carried the ball, got up, ran a support line, hit a breakdown, and then turned it over. I made a tackle, got up, rolled out, and I literally just like went
crazy for 30 seconds.
Yeah, literally. And I remember after being absolutely cooked, and in my mind I was like, I'll never be able to do this again because I would just be like done first. But I remember I knew it was like we're doing like 60 seconds on sort of phase play, then you get a bit of break. I'm just going to go nuts and see what happens. I remember doing that. It was like towards the middle of preseason. So like we had games sort of coming up, and you know how it is in preseason. It's kind of like, don't read into the bibs, but these guys are getting picked in the team every single week. Like, no, so we knew who the stars were, and I was pretty much like the bottom of the pecking order, as you expect being a young boy. I remember after that, the next team meeting in the morning, Michael Foley, who was our coach, like showed this clip and just had like a highlight thing on me of me getting through all this work in like 30, like all that time. And literally from that moment, it was like, no, you're like I like surpassed like two blokes who'd been at the club for ages. And I was just like second choice. And I stayed there for like, I remember he was like he circled this, he was just obsessed with this clip. And it was honestly like me just going nuts for 2 seconds in my mind. Like, I'd never be able to do this in the game, but I'm just going to go nuts, see what happens. And he circled this clip around the organisation because my brother used to work for the Force. He wasn't a player, but he did like the management side and development officer. So we go to schools and try and promote the game, that sort of stuff. And in like their work, like the off-field sector work meetings, Foles would go in there and show this clip about like hard work and stuff. And I think he just like got it in his mind that I was like this like not a hard work guy, which I did. I worked bloody hard. Like, always do all my extras. I'd train on days off. I remember training on Christmas and all stuff. I was nuts.
Training on Christmas, blimey.
Like that like little 30-second like commitment for myself was honestly like one of the most career-changing things, because I went from being a 20-year-old kid with like no real shot at playing Super Rugby, just like young. Yeah. And then I that year I was like a nobody, and I played every single game. I was off the bench every single game, but I played every single game of Super Rugby, and it literally started from that one like 30-second.
Like, I bet when you first thought, I'm going to go crazy for 30 seconds, you didn't think, oh, this is the moment where I'm going to get on the bench. You're like, I'm just going to do it.
I was like, there's no chance of me playing. I'm just going to go nuts to it, and that thing literally like pole vaulted me over guys, and then next thing I know, I was making my debut against the Waratahs, and I was like, this is so weird. Like,
that is crazy. And also obviously in that game, you played against some players that are arguably some of the best Australian players of the last decade, like Michael Hooper, Adam Ashley Cooper. What was that like for you? Obviously, being a fan, I know we speak about that, but you're now a player on that pitch. You were effectively equivalent to all of them. What was that like?
I actually spoke to him today. My first ever professional scrum was against the Kopi Kepu, and he was playing loose in class. And my first ever scrum was against him, and I told him that today. And he was like, "That's so weird." Now we play together. But yeah, that was like proper surreal. And I remember my parents flew the morning of that game. They flew from Perth over to Sydney, which is like a 5-hour flight to watch me. And then because my dad had to work the next day, and they flew back that night. They're just like the most supportive parents ever. But it was just like such a big moment for me, because I just like I'd been an absolute nutcase about being a professional rugby player since I was like 14. And
you've done it.
Culminate and all pretty quickly. Like obviously it's a long period between 14, but the period of me feeling like I had absolutely no shot to playing was like a 4-week period. It was just like bang.
And also to be in the mix of all them players as a prop at a young age. That's not often you see props coming through like that.
Yeah, I think that is also the narrative that you get fed, which is, and most of the time it is true. Like props you don't learn your craft until much later. And I look back on me as the player now, I didn't have any idea what I was doing come scrum time. Like, I only feel like I've just kind of figured it out now, and I'm like 27, turning 28 in a couple of months. But they kind of just like thrust me in there because I worked hard and I was manic and I loved it. And I remember, I actually remember exactly. I played 26 minutes. I remember this because it was the most minutes I played that season. I played 26 minutes, and I just like did the same sort of thing. I'm just going to try to get through as much work as possible in this next 25, 26 minutes. And I just ran around and just tried to carry and hit anything I could. And it was just like, it was such a proud moment for me.
I can imagine, 100%.
Loved the Force so much. I'm a fan to being a player, and I was like, this is the best thing I'm going to play for the Force the rest of my life. And it's just like, it was really cool. Yeah.
Definitely, because also, if I'm right in saying it, was it that season or the season after you went and played for Perth Spirit for a little bit? How did that come about? What was that about?
So that was like, you know how in New Zealand they had Super Rugby, and then they had the ITM Cup or the Mitre 10 Cup, which is kind of like the off-season, semi-professional, professional competition. We didn't have that in Australia until 2014, I think. And that was kind of, so like, the Western Force players who didn't play for the Wallabies, plus the best sort of club players from around WA would go and play in NRC and play for the Spirit.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
That's kind of where you get your sort of, because you don't play much rugby at all in Super Rugby. You played, then it was like 14, 15 games.
Yeah.
And for me, like I came off the bench every single game, getting like 20, 15 minutes a game being a young prop. So I didn't really play that much rugby. So that sort of stuff was like where I really got my minutes in.
So it's kind of the equivalent to like, I'd say like the A-League here, if you know what I mean.
Essentially, yeah.
Because a lot of the I don't know, the London Irish players that won't play first team that much will play in the A-League.
Yeah. It's pretty similar to that, and that's like gold dust for a lot of the squad players who don't get a lot of game time.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It's not like here where you have the Prem, you have Europe, you have the Prem Cup, you have all these different leagues, so everyone will play. Yeah. In home, it's just Super, so you play your number one squad every single game. Yeah. And if you're a squad player, you're playing Perth Club Rugby or you're not playing. So it's tough, yeah.
That must be tricky. So, and also the probably one of the hardest moments of your career, I can imagine, was after 2 seasons with playing professionally Western Force in 2016. Obviously, the move to London Irish came about. Yeah. How hard of a decision was that for you to move over to England? Obviously, I know you said your parents are from England, but was that a tough decision to move over to England to play rugby here?
Yeah, it was tough. But I was kind of, I felt a little bit, because I kind of came in so early, I expected my growth kind of went like bang.
Yeah. And
then it kind of really plateaued. And I got to the point, like my debut where I said I played 26 minutes. I only know that because that's the most minutes I ever played in Super Rugby. I played 26 games.
Yeah.
And all of them were off the bench, and I never got more minutes than my debut. I skyrocketed. I was like, oh my God, this is sick. I'm playing. And then I just felt like
plateaued a bit.
I was just sitting behind guys, and it was like, obviously you kind of, sometimes you need luck, you need injuries or whatever, to get that like shot, but it just never came. And like I was just sitting there and I played every single game just like off the bench, not playing many minutes. And I felt kind of stuck in the mud. And then my last season there, another young boy came in and kind of started doing what I was doing, and then I was kind of like on the bench a bit, and then I wasn't playing, and then it was kind of like, and I was like, I feel like I plateaued and was churning there. And I was having a conversation with my dad, and my dad was like, my dad's always wanted me to cut. My dad's like a devout England supporter still, even though he lived in Australia for so long. I'm telling you, it's nuts. He's like,
so he's been egging you to come to England the whole time,
like all the time. It's like the 2003 World Cup in Australia. Me and my brothers, he didn't. I wouldn't say forced. He brainwashed us into supporting England. So like it
was probably best in the end.
I know when England beat Australia, that Johnny Wilson drop goal, I was like, yeah, like I've never been in England. But I support him. We went to the England South Africa game, which was in Perth. We all dressed as knights, and the Monty Python stuff where they got the coconuts and they're doing this, and we were galloping around the stadium. We just like, so my dad pretty much, we had a conversation at that, and I was like, I just feel like I'm not developing. I'm just sitting here. And I want to play for Wallabies. I want to be an international rugby player. I'm just sitting here. I'm not getting exposure, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And he was like, why don't we? I had the British passport since I was a kid, so I'm like English qualified. It's easy. It's like it's the same as them signing a bloke from the Irish Academy and them signing me. Essentially, like I'm an English player. So I spoke to my agent. Was like, I don't know if I want to. Like I don't really want to stay in the position I'm in now. And at the same time, if I was going to stay in Australia, I didn't want to play for another Super Rugby team.
Yeah, of course, because you've been so involved with Western Force.
I'm just weirdly devoted and loyal to teams. I just couldn't see myself playing in another jersey and stuff. So I wanted to just test what I could do overseas and try and go and develop. So the initial plan was to try and get a gig overseas, go there for 2-3 years, and then come back.
Yeah.
And go back to the Force. That was always my thing. So I just spoke to my agent. He agreed. He was like, I think it will be great for you to develop, especially as a front rower and stuff, coming over all that sort of stuff. And yeah, it was just like it was quite a long process speaking to different clubs, different stuff. So I had conversations with Sale, I had conversations with a few others, and then I actually got an offer from Scarletts in Wales, which I was like, like about to literally like a day about to sign, and then this thing from Irish came through, and I was like, oh, that's London. All my family's there in England. I'd rather be in London than in Llanelli. Like, no offense to any of the listeners, but I love Wales. My fiance is Welsh. Wales is great, but so this came through, and I thought it was an awesome opportunity. And I spoke to and they seemed really keen to have me. Whereas like the other clubs were like making me send heaps and heaps of highlights because they were like, oh, you're a young Australian prop. I don't know if you had to do it over here. So I had to send them like heaps of evidence and be like, sign me, please. Whereas Irish were like, stuff, and were like, oh, we see lots of potential. We really want you to come. I was like, that's awesome. So that was kind of like the main factor. And I signed over here, and obviously my plan of staying a couple of years and back hasn't gone because I loved it over here. Massive shock to the system going and learning. Like I felt like I had to learn a completely new sport.
And that's what I was going to say. So obviously you joining the season, Irish went down to the championship. How did the level differ? How did the rugby differ to Super Rugby to playing in these stadiums that are almost grassroots level in the championship? Because I remember when James Marshall said when he moved over from Super Rugby, he was almost thinking, like, what have I done? But at the same time, like obviously it's been a great decision to move to Irish. But how was it?
It was a weird experience because when I signed, Irish was still in the Prem, and I think they were second from bottom on the log or something. Yeah. And then they went on like a mad losing streak. And I remember the game, me, my brother, and I had a few of my mates over. We stayed up Australian time. It was Irish v Newcastle, and they needed to, if they won, the loser of that pretty much got relegated. Yeah. I remember watching it and watching Irish lose. And like, I didn't know any of the players or anything, and I was screaming at the TV, like, effing and blinded and going nuts. My brother's like, ah. But I mean, look, I was still excited to come over and stuff. But to be fair, I came over with a sense that it was going to be easier than what it was because you play Super Rugby and you come with that narrative I spoke of before, where it's like, of course, if you play Super Rugby, coming to England is going to be a step down. You're going to be, but mate, I've never had more of a shock in my life. Not even just playing in the champ, but just English rugby, especially for a front rower. My first couple of like unit sessions doing scrums and mauls over here, I honestly, like, no word of a lie, I've never contemplated quitting rugby. I was like, what the hell have I got myself into? I was getting folded. I was getting popped out the top of scrums. I was coming up with like head spins, like absolutely done. I was like fit as a fiddle. So day one we came in and we did like a yo-yo test. I was getting like better scores than like back rowers and like backs and stuff. And I was like, I'm all about like playing this fast brand of rugby. And then we hit our first unit session. And I was like, what have I got myself into? And I just remember getting like, it was like weeks on end of me just getting like, absolutely folded and I felt like this small. Like, I was like, what have I done? But then like I slowly like chipped away at it. And it was like one of the first time ever. So Nick Kennedy was the DOR. Yeah. And it's the first time I've ever had a meeting where they're like, you're probably too fit. You can put weight on. I've never heard that in my life. I've always been like, because I've always been so heavy. Yeah. I've always been like, keep my weight down, eat really deliberately, because I've got the metabolism of like, if I look at something, it goes in my hips. Like it's kind of like that. But it was the first time ever, and I came out, I think I was about 118 kilos or something, and I was just getting folded. And it was like, I was running people around, and I was like sweet around the pot, but like set piece, I was just like,
scrum time.
Yeah, and they were just like, your fitness scores are almost like there's no worry there. Go put on 10 kilos. And I was like, excuse me. I was like, Bazinga, let's go. No worries. Just like, it was one of the first times in life I was just like, I'm just gonna eat and like do what I want, and it was awesome. And I put on weight so quick. I put on 10 kilos in about 4 weeks, 3-4 weeks.
Jesus Christ! You must have been eating a lot.
Yeah, weight on Jesus like comes up. If I want to put on weight, I can do it, and if I want to take it off, it's like a 6 month slot. But I put this weight on, and it actually did like. It's funny how like weight, just like a normal thing, like getting a bit heavier. It helped a lot. So now, like, I play at like anywhere between like 127 and 130. That's kind of where I play now. Yeah. And that helps a lot, along with all the reps and reps you get. I went from scrumming once a week in Super Rugby, whereas here we do like every single day. We wouldn't always do 8-on-8 live scrums because load, but you're always doing something around scrum, lifting heavy in the gym, like heavy weights, and you're scrumming and you're whacking into each other and you're mauling. It took me just like a couple of months to really get my head around it, and then I just it just kind of clicked a bit, and I grew to love it. And it's just like it was kind of a game changer for me.
I think a key point that you spoke about there is like, obviously you came to Irish and you weren't anywhere as scrum time. You weren't anywhere near the level of some of the other players you're playing against. And obviously you spoke about how you were dominant in school rugby, and you almost had that pretty good level going up. And then it's almost one of those another wake up call where you're like, all right, I've plateaued for a bit. What's happened?
Yeah, it's very humbling.
Yeah,
and you go from making all these rep teams and being like best and fairest for everything and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Then I came here and I said I felt really small because I got pumped and no one knew who I was, no one cared. Yeah, they just folded me at scrum time. And
exactly, but you look back at it now and you're saying that you're starting to completely understand. And if it wasn't for that moment, you wouldn't be at this moment, if you know what I mean. So it's one of those things. Like you probably wouldn't change that, although you probably didn't like it at the time.
No, it's the best thing for me though. It changes. It humbles you and realizes that you're not as good as what you thought you were.
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
when you're playing, you also pair that with playing the championship, going from Super Rugby to playing the championship. It once again it humbles you and you realize that you're not as good as you think you are. And and scrummaging as well as rugby in general is one of those things where anyone can actually beat anyone on the day. Like some of the guys he's going against the champ are literally like fresh off the building site, and they're like old and they're chubby, and I'm like, I look at him before the game, I'm like, I'm gonna melt this bloke, and then I get my ass handed to me, and I'm like,
how's that happening?
What's going on?
Yeah,
it's one of those. It was really humbling, and it kind of teaches you to like check yourself and take every game and every scrum as like its own individual thing, and
definitely,
just like regardless of the time you get yourself right.
And that's one thing I was going to say. Like both Scott and James Marshall have mentioned, the first 5-6 games in that championship season were almost a bit not concerning, but it was a bit like you've gone down to the championship and you're like, right, we're going to blow this out of the park. Yeah. And then when it got to like 30-40 minutes into a game and you still hadn't scored, there was panic setting, and there was almost that feeling throughout the whole season that we're going to fly through this league. But there was wake up calls throughout that season where it was like, this isn't going to be as easy as we thought.
Yeah, and there was so much pressure on us.
Yeah,
like, so much. We knew that as a club, like financially and stuff, you can't really survive more than 1 year in the championship.
No.
Like, and my first time down there was still the playoff. There was still like the playoffs.
The pressure of that.
We could win 20 regular season games in a row. And if we screwed up one of these playoff games, it doesn't matter, and people will lose jobs.
Yeah,
because of it. So there was like an enormous amount of pressure on us. So if we got into a game and it was close, most of the time we pulled it out. We lost a couple, but like you could feel the tension. Like this is like we better not lose this. Like,
well, you're every other team's final, really. I remember. I think it was that first season. The first loss came against Jersey, I think.
Yeah, and I've never won there. Never. I played.
Yeah, because you lost in the cup as well. Yeah, and I just remember. I remember after that game, because I've been a London Irish fan for ages. I just remember after that game, I was like, "Blimey, we've lost! Like, what's going on?"
It was like that, but it was just weird because you don't try any less hard, but some of the games it's so hard to get up for when you're used to one thing. Yeah. And it may sound like I'm not trying to sound arrogant or whatever, but you're used to playing in stadiums and having good pitches and nice change rooms.
Yeah, definitely.
Playing in front of a crowd and the build up and the TV cameras and all that stuff. That's just becomes the norm to you. And when you go from that to playing in Penzance in the middle of December when it's like absolutely howling, you're playing on a bog, and the guys across from you actually like want to just beat you up.
Yeah,
they want to win, but more than anything, they want to just beat the crap out of you. Yeah, and be like, yeah, you guys think you're this, you're not. Yeah. We're going to beat you up, and it's like that was the hardest part of it, is mentally. It's physically hard because you're playing against some big boys.
The mental challenge.
The boggy pitches, even the contest stuff, but mentally trying to get up for every single game, knowing how much is actually riding on it, was like an absolute slog.
Of course.
And that was just the first time. Yeah.
So when you did obviously get promoted that season, I can imagine there was a massive element of relief around the camp.
Yeah, massive element. I didn't that final promotion game. Oh my lord! I didn't actually get on. I sat for 80 because Ben Franks got a red card for punching someone in the face.
Oh, so yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I didn't get on. So I sat for 80, but like I was like, whatever. We won. We're back in we're in the Premiership.
Yeah.
Like that, because it almost, for me, being over there, my goal was like playing the Prem and playing against obviously the best people. So that first season definitely, it was like so transformative for me. It was so important for my development. I honestly think like the champion. I think if I came over here, the player I was, and went straight into the Premiership, it could have been pretty bad for me because I don't think I was ready.
Yeah.
The Championship almost let me fail without everyone's eyes on me, which was like a really good thing.
Huge, yeah, definitely.
I could play in a Championship Cup game. I remember playing in South Wales, played against like Ospreys A or something.
Yeah.
And it was just like gritty, horrible weather. There was literally about 6 people there. And I played so terribly, like so badly. I was getting folded at scrum time. I just like never played on such a crap pitch. And I was like, one of those ones, the motivation was just like, what am I doing? I've gone from playing against the Blues in Eden Park last year, and now I'm playing literally like a little field in the middle of Wales, getting pumped. And I was like, oh, I'm done with this. But that sort of stuff, like, it humbles you, and it allowed me to have bad games and kind of find my feet over here without the pressure of Premiership, the pressure of being in front of big crowds and having media and all that sort of stuff. So it was actually the biggest, that at the time when we got relegated after I signed, I was definitely blind and being, but it was honestly the biggest blessing in disguise for me, especially as a front rower.
Definitely. And so almost when you got promoted that season, you got back in the Premiership, it was great. But how hard was that mentally to like be a transition from being an absolute, you're everyone's final, you're best in the league by quite considerably, to then being in a relegation battle again in the Premiership with the pressure of people saying, could London Irish get relegated again and stuff like that? Yeah,
well, everyone kind of wrote us off from the beginning because it was hard because we just, I don't know, we just didn't. We had good players, and to be fair, Kendo and Brendan Vent and all that stuff, they were good coaches. We had good coaches, we had good players. And you know when you just get in the habit of losing and you just like, we just couldn't win.
Caught in the downward spiral.
There was so many, like we started the season well with the win, and then we kind of went on this massive losing streak. We couldn't win in Europe. We couldn't win like any game. We couldn't win any A-League game, anything. And I remember there were so many times that season where we'd like build up at halftime, we're up by like 20 plus points. And it's like, there's no way you can lose. And then I remember, what was it? It was Northampton. Yeah, Northampton away. This was like the game, like if we lost this, we're pretty much definitely getting relegated. I remember we absolutely dominated in the first half. I think we're up by like 18 points at the half or something. And then we come out after half time, they literally score 3 tries in like 2 minutes and just undo all our hard work.
Changes the game. Yeah.
And it's just, that happened so many times. Wasps away, I remember the Wasps game, Gloucester, St. Paddy's Day game. I remember we're up like 26-7 or something.
Yeah.
And we find a way to lose. And it was just one of those
seasons. Well, it was like Scott Steele said that it was that season, London Irish were the most team ever to get the most losing bonus points and still get relegated. Like, and that just says it all. Like, the first time Irish got relegated, it was...
You were probably not good enough.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, we weren't good enough. But that second time, easily, well, not easily, but that could have been so different. If one try or a small part, then 10 minutes in a game that changes a game, if they were managed differently, different season. And that's probably what was frustrating.
It was really frustrating. And it was just, because it was almost more frustrating because I knew what awaited the season after. I'd already been through the champ.
Yeah.
And I was like, and it got to the point when it was like, mathematically we weren't relegated, but we were. I remember we still, like, you don't expect this from a coach, but Brendan Venter came into one of the meetings in that point, and we expected it to be like, boys, we still got a chance. Let's do this. And he was like, boys, we are done. We are delegated. There's nothing we can do. And we're like, you're not meant to be saying that. Like, we can still do this. He's like, no, we are done. We're done. We're just going to.
He's given up.
I was like, okay, we're done now.
At that point, yeah.
And then we just kind of I remember that last game of the season against Bath, and we lost by like 60 because it was just so game over.
I mean, at that point, once the coach says that, what are you playing for, really, isn't it?
And then I think he knew that he was out the door because I got fired like the week after that. And then
I think that's probably I don't know. It's probably not the best thing to say.
Lost the confidence of the players a little bit.
Lost the dressing room. Obviously that season back in the Championship, that must have been a little bit of a slog, a bit hard because
that one was.
No one really wanted to be there.
No, and we knew that. We knew there wasn't playoffs and stuff too, so it made it a little bit easier, but also it put way more like that round 2 game against Bedford away is really, really, really important.
Yeah, of course.
So it was another slog, but for me that was like another really important season for me because my first sort of year and a half here, it wasn't more of the same, but it was very similar to my Super Rugby experience where I'd come here and there was like a big international tight head in front of me and I felt like no matter what I did, I just couldn't start. Yeah. I was on the bench every game. So they had Franksy, which fair enough, he's a World Cup winner, good player. Like I just couldn't start. I could start like the meaningless BNI Cup games against Ospreys away and Ospreys out or whatever. But any of the big champ games or whatever, I just couldn't get a start. And I was like, oh, here we go again. And then the next year, we still had Franksy. And then when we got promoted, they signed Petrus Duplessis, who's obviously like Sarri's ledge, amazing scrummager, has a big reputation around the thing. So I was like, here we go again. And the same thing. Whether it was Franksy or Petrus, I was on the bench. And then finally, I think one of the European games I played really well. And Kendall Stuff gave me a start in the Prem game.
Yeah.
I was like, let's go. And then the back end of that season, I started every single game in the Prem, and I was like, finally, this is my thing. This is like my shot. And then we went back down to the champ, and I was like, oh crap. But it gave me a season. It gave me a full season where I pretty much I think I started almost every single champ game. And because in the champ, you have one less substitute on the bench. It's a weird rule in England. Where each level you go down, they take one player off the bench. So they want to promote people playing more minutes or something. It's
that is bizarre.
You have 22-man teams in the champ, and Deck Kidney was just like, Ollie, you're super fit. We're just picking one loose head on the bench and a hooker. You're playing 80, and I played 80 honestly probably 12 games. 12 games. I was just playing, pumping out 80s, just churning out. Game after game, minute after minute after minute, scrums, and it was so good for me. I actually had one of my best professional seasons, so I was just playing so much.
Yeah, definitely.
It was another really good season for me, which kind of set me up for being back in the Prem now, when I felt really confident. It was more like a mental confidence for me because I always just kept getting picked. That's second string, always on the bench, always on the bench. It was it does make you doubt yourself a bit because I'm confident I could start and be sweet, but I just never got the opportunity. So I was just frustrated, and then you worry if you get that one shot and you mess it up, you'll go straight back to the bench. And it's just but that gave me a season worth of work starting we were a premiership quality side in the champ.
Of course, yeah.
And that was it was just a massive mental sort of confidence booster for me.
Definitely, and it was that season you won Supporters Player of the Year. How that must have been on top of obviously playing every game and the confidence boost. That must have been quite a nice personal thing for yourself to kind of come away after the hard work of sitting on the bench, stuff like that. To get that must have been a great moment for yourself.
That was cherry on top of the cake sort of thing. Actually, luckily, I've still got the trophy just over there because last year, because the season got suspended and stuff.
Of course, no, I got it.
Yeah. I've had it for 2 years almost. I'm the longest serving
supporters player of the year.
I'm just going to keep it forever now. But no, that was another sort of just cherry on top of the cake. It was more a sort of affirmation to myself, being you're on the right path. Just keep at it, and you're ready for this next step of being in the Premiership and probably going into it as the first choice tight end for the club. Which
definitely. Obviously we started the Premier season last year, and Good start, started strong, and then the news broke out about Sarries getting automatically relegated. How did that impact the camp, the confidence? That must have been a relief, because obviously London Irish, amongst other teams, probably were going to be in a bit of a relegation fight again. That must have been amazing. Well, not amazing, but
to be fair, I'm not gonna lie, remember when the initial reaction of it was just like a massive sigh of relief.
Yeah.
Because like I honestly don't know if I could have done another year in the championship.
No.
Like I was coming up on it was last year of my deal and stuff, and I was like, if we get relegated, I love the club, but I was like, I don't know if I can be 27 running around the champ. Like I still want to play. Yeah. I still play international rugby now. My goal is to play for England. Like I'm in disqualified. That's my goal.
Yeah, of course.
No matter how well you play, unless you're Joe Thockensinger and you're a freak, you're not getting picked for England from the champ, or if you're serious, it's established. So I'm just like, it was. So when that happened, like obviously everyone has their own opinions on it, and for a majority of the Sarries boys, that there's majority of that team probably did nothing wrong, and they're sort of getting punished for it, which is sad. But at the same time, I was honestly just like, thank Lord, it's not us.
Of course, and I think fans were, of course, players were. Yeah. I mean, obviously, it's not great for the game that's happened, but when you're a London Irish fan, it's absolutely brilliant. Yeah,
it was. I mean, it was great for us. Let us play with a lot more freedom, and you saw after the COVID break, it allowed us to blood a bunch of young boys without the threat of that stuff. It let quite a few teams really experiment and try stuff and not just play the safe team every single week.
Yeah.
Because you have this like imminent, like job threatening scare of being relegated.
Definitely. And so obviously then COVID hit in last season. How did that impact you? Obviously, the training. What was that like when COVID hit? Obviously, it was quite demotivating, deflating.
Yeah, it was weird. It was stressful. Like I'm like, as I've said before, like my exercise and rugby is just like my mental outlet.
Yeah,
because if
what keeps you going.
Exercise. Yeah, honestly it is. It's literally my fuel, and I'm sitting in like a small apartment in Twickenham with no gym equipment, nothing.
Yeah.
And just like when this thing first hit, everyone was like, "Oh, it's not going to be that big. We'll be back." I remember when we first got our first training session got cancelled. They were like, "Yeah, boys, the Gloucester game in like 3 weeks. We'll go ahead. Don't worry. We're just going to stay at home this week, and then we'll be back." And everyone was like, "Okay, whatever."
Yeah.
So I remember doing push-ups in the kitchen and going for a run at a park round and be like, "Okay, we'll be back next week. It'll be fine." And then it just like obviously snowballed into what it was. And it was, I just turned into I think it could have been quite demotivating for a lot of people. But for me, I was just like, I trained so hard.
It's a good time for personal development, isn't it, really? Because you got so much time.
I had so much time, but obviously I trained so hard to be a better rugby player. But for me, it was the only thing that kept me sane. The only thing. So I was lucky enough that the guy who does our skin folds at the club, he owns a gym in Esher, and he obviously had to close his gym for lockdown. He had like a rowing machine and some stuff that it was just like going to sit there. And he messaged me to be like, "Do you want anything?" And I was like, "Please."
Yes.
I have like nothing on the apartment. I literally have nothing. So I got a couple pairs of dumbbells off him and a rowing machine. And like I had a very small apartment with this like alleyway kitchen, so I'd like flip this rowing machine up behind our living room door to like hide it during the day. Otherwise, my fiance would kill me if it was like in there the whole time. So I like keep it tidy, and then I just like put this rowing machine in our like little alleyway kitchen, and I just annihilate myself. So I was doing just like I'd scour the internet all day for like rowing and dumbbell CrossFit workouts, all this sort of stuff, and I had a schedule like. I'd do so like Monday I'd go and do like a running session and like flog myself, and then we're lucky enough that the artificial pitch at Hazelwood was still open. Obviously we couldn't go and train with anyone, but it's locked and they had like a code so you can get in there and use that pitch to run. So I'd go there, and they'd left a bunch of just like barbells and weights and stuff on the pitch. So I had this routine where like Monday mornings I'd go there. I'd just like make up this like horrendous running session and just like flog myself.
Kill yourself, literally do that. And then afterwards I had this like pretty much as like a makeshift
prison workout gym that I'd get. So like we didn't have benches or anything. So I'd lay a bunch of the plates down on the ground, and we had like these scrum pad sort of things, which I'd put the barbell on, and I'd managed to like have this weird sort of bench pressy thing. It was pretty crap, but it was better than nothing. I managed to make it
creative.
It was like a makeshift bench press. I'd do that. I could do bent over rows. I could do shoulder press with the barbell.
Yeah.
Kind of all do upper body, and then I'd deadlift because I couldn't squat or anything. So I'd deadlift for legs and do some like just do what I could. I do that on a Monday. On a Tuesday, I do a home workout with like rowing and dumbbells, and then I'd use the dumbbells and do a weight session after that too. Wednesday, I go in and just do weights, have kind of day of cardio. Thursday, repeat, do a massive run session. Friday, smack myself again, and then either Saturday or Sunday, I'd smack myself again at home. So I was doing like 5 days a week of just like.
You're still training blooming hard.
Yeah, and it wasn't like I was doing like chilled sessions. I'm just manic when it comes to stuff. I was like, in my mind, I'm like, if I don't keep doing this, I'm going to be terrible when I come back. So I was just like,
you got to go for it.
I had nothing to do. Like, you'd know.
Yeah.
I was just like, I speak to my fiance about it all the time. We're like, what did we do during that 6 months where it was like fully locked down? I just annihilate myself in the morning, and then I don't know what I did for the rest of the day looking back on it.
No.
We were in an apartment, like we didn't have, I've got a dog and stuff now. I didn't have a dog then. I was just like, we literally would just sit there and like, I'd play Fortnite with the boys a bit, and then we just like watch stuff, and it was just kind of that. So like that sort of 2 hours in the morning where I like belted myself was kind of like I felt like it was the only thing I could control.
Yeah, definitely.
Like the only thing I could control was if I put in the work today, and then I could feel down to myself if I literally lay down and was a zombie looking at a screen for the rest of the day. I kind of earned it.
You've earned it, yeah, definitely. And so obviously after all that, you've obviously trained hard. How hard was it physically? Obviously, I know you said you trained hard, but was it hard physically to then come back to the kind of restart to rugby when it was loads of games, not proper training really? How hard was that for the boys?
It was like it was only doing running and pushing prowlers and weights and stuff that only gets you so far. Really.
Yeah, of course.
When you have to scrum and maul, tackle someone, get up, get around the corner, then have to catch, pass, think about game. But like, I felt like honestly, that first couple of sessions back, I literally was like, everyone was like, I've never been around with more drop balls because no one's like, I didn't have equipment. I hadn't touched a rugby ball in like 5 months.
Oh, that's crazy.
It was nuts. And we had like a short window to prep again. And then we went back into this like manic 9 week, or not even, it was like 6 weeks somewhere. We just played so
loads
much
of games. I know.
Like it was manic. I think I played 8 of the 9 games of it, and it was like I played like 8 games in like 5 weeks or something. It was just like
it is crazy. Well, I just honestly fingers crossed that this doesn't happen again this season. I don't know. I don't think people could cope with losing sport again. To be honest.
No, I don't.
It's horrible.
Fingers crossed it won't. I mean, we're doing everything we can to soldier through, and I mean, we had a couple of our games cancelled recently. It's just like the nature of the beast at the moment. I'm hoping that they're just going to soldier through, and if they got to cancel stuff, they will. And they'll play
exactly. As long as they just don't close everything off. That is, if there's a few rugby games on, I'm happy. And obviously, more recently, last weekend, you made your 100th appearance for London Irish in a pretty thrilling game. It was one of those you can't take your eyes off it. And then you happened to score late to salvage a draw, obviously with Paddy Jackson's conversion. Explain the 100th appearance, the pride, the game. It was crazy. It almost all fell into piece.
Yeah, the whole experience was like nuts because you know what's coming for a while. You kind of like know roughly what caps you were on. I knew that the Sale game was my 99th. I knew that, so the one off that. And then in the Sale game, in the warm up for the Sale game, I did my calf, and I was like,
typical.
My lord! Like luckily, like touch wood, I've barely been injured since I've been a club, which is why I've only been here for like 4 seasons and 100 caps already.
Yeah.
Luckily, I've been injured, and that Sale game was like the one game where we were allowed crowds. This was like when we were in tier 2 for like a week. So, and my parents happened to be like in the country, and my parents never get to watch me play, and they managed to come to that Sale game, and I was like, and I like did my calf in the warm up, and I was like, I knew as soon as I did, I was like, I knew I've done this, and I'm like, I'm playing. Like, I don't care. I'm playing.
Yeah.
So I managed, and I came on at half time, and my calf was like sore as anything, but I managed to get through 40 minutes. And then like I knew after that I was like, oh, I'm going to be done for a while. So I got injured on 99 for one, and then the week I'm meant to come back, we get COVID.
A cancellation.
Bath game gone. Okay, the week after that, next game, shut down again. That game gone. So I was sitting on 99 like
sitting on 99 for ages.
Honestly, like the most games I've like missed from injuries since I've been here has been like a 1 game sort of like hammy strain or something. Like that. And this is like I get to 99, it's like 5-week block. Where I'm just let alone the 2 weeks before that, our whole training facility got shut down. So I'm training from home again. I'm literally doing push-ups on my living room floor.
Having flashbacks.
Yeah, and this at least the first time was during summer. So when we're going to train,
exactly,
I was going to train by myself. I was like doing it in a singlet and run. The other day we were doing like crazy down up mouth. I don't know if you ever run a mouth before. It's pretty. You just run and hitting the deck. And it was like ice. And I was doing it, and it was like I was literally sitting there like. It's mid-season. I'm a professional rugby player in the Premiership, and I'm literally on an icy mud pitch on a Tuesday morning, just like, what is going on?
What is going on? This is not how professional rugby looked as a kid, is it?
I was like, I bet you footballers wouldn't do this. But,
definitely not.
But so there was that. The whole build-up to the 100th was like this elongated, frustrating, weird process, and then we come in after that, and I realised I'm starting. That game, and I was like, oh, so this is pretty cool. So then we play on the Sunday. So like on the Friday we have like when the team gets like we know the rough team on a Monday, but obviously due to the COVID stuff the week before, we had some guys come out of isolation midweek, so we had like the rough outline of the team, and I knew I was starting, and then we got short up on Friday. We had like a little jersey presentation and stuff at the club. Which was cool, and then they announced on social media, my phone started blowing up and all that stuff, and I was like, "This is pretty cool."
Faces everywhere.
But then the big thing was like just before the game, so we got to the stoop, and in the change room they had like this big TV screen set up, and they like played this highlights package and of my games leading up to this, and then in like intermittent with that with like all these messages from my family. My friends and stuff.
That's crazy.
I was like in the changing room floor, and I was blubbering. It was already like it's really hard for me because it's such a big milestone. I know how like proud my family is, and that, we had no fans there, and no one could be there. And the hard thing for me is my parents live like obviously they don't live in Australia, but they live in Kuala Lumpur, live in Malaysia. So like I see my parents maybe once a year, and the fact that they're actually in the UK right now, but they can't come. They're literally like an hour away, and it's easier when they're over the other side of the world and they can't come. It's like
you can kind of rationalise in your head,
when they're an hour away and they can't come and watch me and stuff, and then I just like saw their messages and like from my fiance, from my mates, from my brothers, I was just like massive blubbering mess before the game.
I can imagine,
but it was just like, but it literally just got me in this thing. I was like, this is like it was a weird like chain of events, and then obviously the game played out how it did. And I ended up scoring. Like I scored in the first half, which I thought was trying. I got disallowed, and I was like, "Damn, that would have been cool to score my own, or whatever." And then I thought that tried to end there, and then we ended up drawing. I was like, "This is just like so weird." And then Bill, our social media guy, interviewed me again after the game, and I started crying again.
I know. I've watched that interview on YouTube, and you can see the emotion.
I started crying again because I was like, "Man, this is just like absolutely nuts."
Yeah.
Because as we've discussed, like, I came over here with like. Pretty low, not low expectations, but expectations to come over here to develop and go back to Australia and push. But I came over here and I just like fell in love with playing in the UK, with the club, with everything. Like I met my wife, my future wife here, and I was just like, it's just like so weird how things fall into place.
Exactly, and it's one of those things like you've faced adversity along the way, but you've clearly worked so bloody hard the whole time from all school rugby. And then to get that recognition on social media, all the little things, the messages from your parents, your fiance, all that stuff's like, it's almost what you've worked for all your life. The setbacks have brought you to this point that are just like, wow.
There's so much work and crap that goes on behind the scenes just to be able to play that sort of 80 minutes on TV in front of people. There's like so much work that goes on. And the thing is like, even all the boys who like don't get picked as squad players, everyone, to be a professional rugby player, you've got to dedicate yourself and work like really, really hard. And like, it's definitely the proudest moment of my career ever. And the fact that it was like such a big moment, and I couldn't have my family there and stuff, was like it was really bad. But at the same time, I was just like, this is like so nice to have a moment where it's not all about work super hard, do the game, and analyze back onto the next one. It's just like professional rugby is it's just like this never-ending barrage of like prepare, train, play, review, go again, and you just like flush it. And it's just like this. But it was a nice moment. Like looking at my phone after the game, honestly, it was just like exploded, and I was like, "What the hell?" It's just like it's so cool. And then even like around like our mates and a few people who I see around. Because I live in Richmond, a few people I see around Richmond and stuff were just like coming up to me, talking to me about it. People I don't know them, but they've come up and been like, "Oh, I saw you playing this," and I was like, "This is like so cool."
This is crazy.
It is. It was nuts. It's nuts. It was just like it's just like a really, really cool moment. And the way the game played out, like obviously if we'd won, if Paddy had hit that monster kick at the end, then it would have. I think honestly, I would have collapsed. Yeah. I was just like, this is like too cool. But it was still like it was amazing. Honestly, it was so cool.
100%. Look, finally to wrap up the podcast, mate. It's been absolute brilliant episode, and I'm sure young rugby players are going to bloody love listening to it. If you could give one piece of advice to young aspiring rugby players, what would it be?
Do the work when no one's watching. 100%. If you want to be a professional rugby player, and I say this first, you don't have to be a pro rugby player. Rugby is like such a good way to just learn about life. So if you're happy just playing with your mates, playing club rugby, being social, having fun, learning teamwork, all that stuff, rugby is the best game in the world for that. But if you want to be a professional rugby player, you got to be willing to put in the work when no one's watching. Like I thousands and thousands of sessions I've done by myself, just running, flogging myself, doing monotonous scrum setups by myself. I've done so many of them, and that's the kind of the unseen work that everyone who plays pro, not just the top guys in England, like everyone, most people want who are professional rugby players have put in that work and they want to get to that level and they're trying. Like you have to put in the work essentially. But at the same time, if you want to play with your mates and have fun, it's awesome for that too.
100%, and that's what I think is great. Like rugby can offer just so much to everyone. Like it doesn't matter whether you're the best player in your team or the worst player. Just the whole package, the social event that rugby brings. It's brilliant. It is unreal. Look, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, and all the best with the future, mate. And yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Loved it. Cheers, mate.